What if I told you the most dominant team in modern Formula One suddenly looks lost? Just a season ago, Red Bull Racing wasn't just winning, they were rewriting the limits of dominance. Race after race, they were untouchable. But now, reports are suggesting they're nearly 1 second off the pace. 1 full second. In Formula One terms, that's not just a gap, it's a different category. So what changed? Did Red Bull suddenly forget how to build a fast car, or is Formula One itself shifting under their feet? Because this isn't just about performance, this is about the beginning of a new era, and Red Bull might be the first major casualty of it. Let's break this down. At the center of this story is the 2026 regulation reset, one of the biggest technical overhauls in Formula One history. New power units, new aerodynamics, new energy deployment systems, and most importantly, a completely different philosophy of how performance is extracted. Now here's where things get interesting. Red Bull's dominance in recent years has been built around one key principle: aerodynamic efficiency. Their cars, especially under Adrian Newey's design philosophy, have mastered airflow management. Clean air, stable rear ends, incredible downforce without excessive drag. That's why drivers like Max Verstappen could push the car to the absolute limit with confidence. But 2026 flips that equation. The new regulations place a much heavier emphasis on electrical energy deployment. Nearly 50% of the power is expected to come from the hybrid system. That means energy recovery, battery efficiency, and deployment strategy are no longer secondary factors, they are central to performance. And suddenly, Red Bull's biggest strength might not matter as much anymore. Think about it like this. In the current era, you can compensate for slight engine weaknesses with superior aerodynamics. But in 2026, if your energy deployment isn't optimized, you lose time on every straight, every acceleration zone, every lap. And that's where the concern begins. Because Red Bull is entering a completely new territory, building their own power unit. For years, they relied on Honda's expertise. Now, through Red Bull powertrains, they're effectively becoming an engine manufacturer. And that's a massive challenge. Developing a competitive hybrid power unit isn't just about horsepower. It's about thermal efficiency, battery management, harvesting under braking, deployment mapping, and reliability under extreme conditions. One small miscalculation, and suddenly you're not fighting for wins, you're fighting just to stay in the top 5. And according to early data and paddock whispers, that's exactly where Red Bull might be heading. Nearly 1 second off. But where exactly is that time being lost? Let's break it down technically. First, energy deployment. In 2026, drivers will rely heavily on electrical boost coming out of corners and down straights. If Red Bull's system isn't harvesting enough energy under braking, or if deployment isn't optimized, the car will simply run out of power mid-straight. Imagine exiting a corner perfectly, but halfway down the straight, your rival just keeps accelerating while your power fades. That's not driver error, that's system limitation. Second, weight distribution. The new hybrid systems are heavier and more complex. Integrating them into the chassis without compromising balance is a massive engineering challenge. If the car becomes too rear-heavy or too unstable under braking, tyre wear increases and performance drops over a race stint. And that brings us to the third issue: tyres. Tyre behaviour in Formula One is everything. If your car slides even slightly more due to poor balance or inconsistent power delivery, tyre degradation increases exponentially. That means shorter stints, more pit stops, or slower lap times as drivers manage wear. So now you're not just losing time on straights, you're losing time over an entire race distance. And suddenly, that 1 second gap starts to make sense. But here's the twist: Red Bull isn't the only team facing this challenge. The entire grid is stepping into the unknown. So why does Red Bull look more vulnerable than others? Because they have more to lose. When you're on top, every weakness is exposed more brutally. Teams like Mercedes and Ferrari have been investing heavily in hybrid technology for years. Their institutional knowledge in power unit development could become a decisive advantage in 2026. Meanwhile, Red Bull is still building that foundation. And in Formula One, experience matters. A lot. Now let's talk about strategy. If Red Bull knows they're behind, what can they actually do? One option is aggressive development. Push upgrades faster than rivals, take risks, and try to close the gap mid-season. But that comes with reliability risks, and in a regulation-heavy era, one failure can cost massive points. Another option? Play the long game, accept short-term losses, gather data, and build towards dominance in later seasons. But that's a dangerous strategy when you have a driver like Verstappen in his prime. Because here's the real question. Will a driver like Verstappen tolerate a non-competitive car for long? We've seen in Formula One history, even the greatest drivers start looking elsewhere when performance drops. And if Red Bull can't deliver, the entire driver market could explode. And that's where this story becomes bigger than just lap times. This could reshape the entire grid. Now let me ask you something. Do you think Red Bull underestimated the 2026 regulations? Or is this just early testing noise that they'll eventually overcome? Because in Formula One, perception can be misleading. Teams sandbag. Data is hidden. Performance is masked. But a 1-second gap? That's hard to fake. And if it's real, Red Bull is facing something they haven't experienced in years. Vulnerability. But here's why you shouldn't count them out just yet. This is still the team that mastered ground effect faster than anyone else. The same team that turned regulation changes into dominance. The same engineering group that consistently finds performance where others don't. And adversity? Sometimes that's where Red Bull is at its most dangerous. Because when a dominant team is pushed into a corner, they innovate, they take risks, they redefine the game. So maybe this isn't the fall of Red Bull. Maybe this is the beginning of their next evolution. Or maybe, just maybe, Formula One is finally resetting the balance of power. And we're about to witness a completely new era of competition. So, as we head closer to 2026, keep watching closely. Because the biggest story in Formula One might not be who's winning, but who's struggling to keep up, and whether Red Bull can fight their way back to the top, or if this is the moment their dominance truly ends. What do you think? Will Red Bull recover and dominate again, or are we looking at the start of a completely new F1 hierarchy? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want deep technical breakdowns like this, make sure you subscribe, because this story is just getting started.